Good morning, everyone. I don't know if it's the morning for you, but it is so much the morning for me that it's practically still the middle of the night. And that is the perfect time for this reading. I woke up and knew it was time to get into this. So I already have some cards because I was drawing cards for myself and for my husband, like I do every morning. And the cards that came out: transformation. I tried to shuffle them back in and it was like I was stopped. I couldn't shuffle them back in. I knew they were going to be part of this video. And to get so many major arcana and an ace is something else. Transformation. Transformation. The Empress. Strength. Justice. And the Ace of Crystals, or the Ace of Pentacles. The renewal, the new beginning, the new materialized reality. Did I say this is a reading for ancient Lyra? For Lyran Starseeds? Of course, you don't need to know that you're a Lyran Starseed to watch this video. You might find out that you're a Lyran Starseed by watching this video. Even if you don't think that you ever lived in ancient Lyra, this can still resonate because you can still have Lyran energy coming through for you. So this is an all-inclusive video. You're more than welcome to watch it no matter where you're at with this. I expect it to resonate the most for some of my deepest soul family kind of souls who were there with me so long ago in ancient Lyra. Lyra is very interesting to me because I consider it one of the most important beginning points for the human story, even though we are talking so long ago, billions and billions, perhaps even trillions of years. We won't worry too much about the human Earth time calculation, but it was an incredibly long time ago in terms of the galaxy's age, right? In terms of the galaxy's physical age, in terms of the age of the rocks and the stars in our galaxy. In ancient Lyra, definitely the planet that I remember is long gone, and some of the stars are even long gone. Very, very, very long time ago. But I consider it a beginning for the human story because the journey that we took to create the human experience really began there. Of course, the human experience includes all kinds of different energies. Two that really want to be mentioned here are the mantis beings and the spider beings. They are really important to our human psyche, to our human condition. They, of course, those two specific types of consciousness, they were around long before all of this stuff that I'm going to talk about. So we could even talk about the beginning of the human story, beginning with the spider beings or with the mantis beings, but they are significantly different from us, right? They're in insectoid or arachnid bodies, right? So what I mean by the beginning of the human story is that the ancient Lyrans, there are so many different kinds, and the Lyrans having been around for so many eons, and of course still being around today and in different types of forms and in different types of states of consciousness and in different dimensions and in different densities, right? This is a huge kettle of fish. We're talking about enormous variety and potential and possibility here. But in general, when we think about the Lyrans, they are kind of like us, right? They kind of look like us. They walk around in these human-like bodies, or of course, it's not really that they're like us, it's that we are like them, right? We are like them. We are their very, very, very far distant future descendants. But we look like them. Many of them, of course, infamously and most famously, were rather feline in shape. Famously, the cat form, right? All of the cat beings kind of started there, and many of the Lyrans, I know some Lyran starseeds, when they are visited by their Lyran star family, they say that they're Lyran star family, that they have manes. Some of them can look like tigers or like panthers or even like house cats. Little cat ears. They can be furry, but still very much kind of human-like, right? And it's worth noting here that this whole feline thing didn't even really begin in Lyra. The feline thing comes down on the Blu-ray. There is a Blu-ray collective of beings known as the Elohim. The Elohim, sometimes also known as the Elohe. This is all with an E. I'll try to write that down in the description so you can see the word Elohim and Elohe. I typically use the word Elohim, but it's all kind of the same thing. We're talking about the feline Blu-ray beings who are really foundational, fundamental, and instrumental to creating our experience. And we are them and they are us, right? We are them and they are us. Of course, for some of you, this might resonate more as they are your guides or they are your ancestors. For me, I'm always led to see, because this is relevant for me, this doesn't have to be relevant for you, but this is relevant for me. I'm always led to see, when I connect with a being out there in the universe, I'm always led to understand how that is me, how that is me in another life, how that is part of who I am. But of course, some of you will see that more as an outside energy coming through for you, a friend, an ally, connecting with you. You can absolutely understand this in that context, if that's what's relevant for you. So the Lyrans, just to kind of finish off this little tiny bit of galactic history in the most general way possible, because it's not the details that are important, but I do think the general flow here is useful to know, especially if you're kind of new to this. So the Lyrans went off, and they were very a large portion of them were explorers, right? Explorers, always wanting to go out, always wanting to push, always wanting to see new things, see what's in the new star, right? See what that next star has to hold. They went off and became explorers. Some of them became conquerors. Some of them, I'm not entirely clear on what this is. I'm a little bit tempted to say that the Lyrans, some of them actually became the Draco. I always am shown this really tight connection between some of the Lyrans, a subset of the Lyrans, and the Draco, sometimes to the point where if I'm looking at someone, I can see their Lyran self and I can see their Draco self, and they look like the same to me, and sometimes I get confused and I can't parse that apart. Sometimes the Lyran energy and the Draco energy is so close together, to me it seems the same. So I will just kind of point that out and hold that lightly. There's a connection there, because the Lyrans are foundational to so many other beings. They are the ancestors of so many of the beings who kind of are like us, right? Because we are also like the Draco. On Earth, we are the melting point of all of these different galactic energies, and we have them inside of us also. And just to throw out there for those who are concerned, there are also benevolent Draco. They're not only the evil, monstrous boogeymen of the galaxy, but that's a story for a different day. Some of the Lyrans went off to become what we call the Vegans, right? The Vegan starseeds, the famous mystics. I always think of the Vegans as, they're basically like Jedi, right? They're basically like Jedi, if you think it, like they're these like deeply spiritual mystics, but that were like really disciplined, right? Really about discipline. The Lyrans went off into the Orion star system, and their descendants got embroiled in the wars there. The Lyrans went off and seeded the Pleiadian star system. I think that's what's relevant to mention for now. The Lyrans encountered the Syrians as they traveled. There was much interplay between the Lyrans and the Sirens, and eventually a melding, and I think there is even a kind of hybrid, mixed group of beings, the Lyrans and the Syrians, blending together. But okay, let's return. I'm so sorry that was blurry this whole time. I had my eyes closed while I was talking, but that's actually kind of perfect, right? We were really zoomed out. We were really zoomed out, kind of going galactic on this. Now we're zooming in and returning to this planet that I remember. Specifically, I remember a garden, and I almost think of it as the Garden of Eden, right? As if the Garden of Eden was not here on Earth, as if there was a Garden of Eden on this ancient Lyran planet. And I remember myself in these shining white robes, and I had a staff, and it's really interesting to me because there is a version of myself out there in the non-physical who looks like this. But on Lyra, I essentially was able to embody this aspect of my higher self, like on a one-to-one level. I was the embodiment of my higher self in ancient Lyra, this being glowing in white, holding a staff. That's because everything was just beginning, right? Everything was brand new, everything was young, and we had not taken on any trauma and karma and baggage and all of that. We were brand new, we were young. The planet was pulsing with a variety of life that I don't even know how to describe. I've never sensed it here on Earth. It's like this primordial vibrancy, right? This feeling of having just been created, just been born, so brand new. Have you ever had a batch of kittens or puppies or a baby? I've never seen a newborn baby, but I'll assume it's the same thing with babies, with human babies. But when you have like kittens, right, or puppies, when they're only a few weeks old, or if they're just born, it's like you can feel that they just came in from source, right? They're so vibrant, that their light is so bright, and it's like, you either know what I mean or you've never experienced it. So that's what this entire Lyran planet, this whole Lyran civilization, the beings there, that's what we were like in the beginning. That's what we were like in the beginning. So vibrant, brand new, fresh out of source. I would really even liken this energy to Aries energy. So vibrant, so brand new. Anyway, so there I was, being this embodiment of my higher self, having just arrived, right? Just arrived. And I was aware on some level, not perfectly, not with perfect linear vision, but I was aware in the sense of this deep inner knowing, and of having premonitions, and of having an understanding of the future flow, and knowing that the future flow, that the river was going to split in many directions, and that there would be tributaries to the river, and that it was going to flow and join back up and split, and join back up and split, and that there was this flow to it, knowing that there was not only one future, but that there were infinite future time streams and experiences. I had no attachment to how this was going to play out. I simply wanted to see. I wanted to watch this journey unfold. I wanted to watch the story unfold. I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to see what could happen. I wanted to see it, right? I was fresh in from my higher self, and my higher self could see it from this top-down view, and I had been doing that, right? I had been doing that from this top-down view. I had been able to see the flow of the galaxy, of the universe, of the other universes, right? I had been able to see it, but I wanted to get into a body, and I wanted to live it, and I wanted to see what it would be like to live it. And this feeling here is very non-dual, because I understood it wasn't about good versus evil. It wasn't about right and wrong. It wasn't about dark and light. It was only about what is. It was only about what is. And I understood that there would be pain and suffering and struggle, but it's kind of funny to say, but it's like I didn't care. I knew that wasn't important because I knew that there would be good and there would be bad. And that these experiences, some really enjoyable and some less enjoyable, they would simply be part of all that is. And all I wanted to do was to see it and experience it for myself and to sense it inside my body, to really get inside of it. A lot like, I think, a cat. You know how cats are so curious, they're always sticking their head in everything. Some cats anyway, a lot of cats are always very curious, sticking their head in everything, even sticking their heads in places where they might get hurt, right? So curious, this overwhelming curiosity and this vibrancy and this thirst for whatever may come. This thirst for whatever may come is what I felt. And that, I think, really kind of captures, for me anyway, the heart of the Lyran experience. Just wanting to know, wanting to see, wanting to perceive, wanting to experience it, right? From the place of the body, wanting to experience it from the body. This garden that was so lush, so lush, but it's interesting, I don't really see it as tropical. There were probably tropical areas of this experience, right? But what I remember, it wasn't tropical. It was like lots of bright green, bright green, almost like Wales is so vibrantly green, or any place that gets lots of rain, right? But isn't tropical, is so vibrantly green. And green vines and green trees, everything exploding with color. The flowers and the berries and the butterflies and the fairies, right? Lyra is also famous for being the beginning place of the fairies. Some people call it the fairy root races were there. That's a story for another day. The fairies were there, and we were also the fairies. Some of you very specifically were the fairies here. It's this Empress energy, right? This Empress energy. In the beginning, for a very long time, this kind of paradigm of this lushness, of this vibrant garden, of this willingness to just exist and to just perceive and experience and explore, that went on for a very long time, but we weren't really aware of the passing of time. We were so vibrant, and the energy of this planet that is no more, was so, I'm gonna run out of words here. It's like source energy was more alive. We were closer to it. And we lived a very long time, like in our bodies. Our bodies were not exactly the same, you know, as we are here. They were physical bodies, but the only way I can describe it is that they were somehow less physical, right? We could shift them more. We had more, we were so much more in tune with our bodies, and we didn't really understand. For a long time, we didn't have the separation between body and spirit. We were the body and we were spirit. It was all one thing. We hadn't really come to understand the separation from body and spirit yet. And I think that is one of the reasons it is really useful in terms of your energetic health to just be listening to this story, just be taking in this energy here, because we're tuning back into a state of consciousness where we were not divided from our body. And I'm really starting to see here, we did not experience the division between body and soul, because our bodies were created from our soul. That's really interesting. So I am very, so a little bit of a side note here. This will seem like a strange tangent, but it's relevant. So I am very interested in evolutionary biology, and I do really resonate with the Earth, the planet, evolving biologically on its own, in that kind of natural kind of process, in that physical process. And of course, if we were to talk about how did the human body become the way it is, from my view, I would say there was natural evolution, and then there was also genetic engineering involved, and potentially other processes as well, but I see it as kind of all rolled into one. But that's not really, so that's how I experience my human body anyway. I experience it as having evolved from processes of natural biological evolution, with genetic engineering, and also with the influence of my consciousness, right? That's how I perceive my human body on Earth at this time, the one I'm in right now. In ancient Lyra, that's not what I'm seeing for this original kind of garden. I'm actually seeing that we just came down riding the blue ray. And there's also like a green here, right? Because the Elohim, they're all often called like Emerald Order. There's a segment of blue ray consciousness that is called the Emerald Order. And it always interested me why is it emerald? Emerald is green. But I guess green bleeds into blue, and green, they bleed into each other, right? They're right next door. So there is this like kind of emerald emanation happening here. And what I'm seeing is that, we came down as these souls riding the blue ray, and we simply materialized our bodies like from our soul. And that was why for a long time we had no separation between spirit and body. And it wasn't until much later when our actions kind of rebounded back on us, and we ended up in our own innocence and in our own exuberance and carefree in our own desire to experience the physical world and to truly, truly, truly experience it. Eventually, we kind of ended up traumatizing ourselves, right? And I'm talking about on our cosmic journeys. We go out into the galaxy. We're explorers, and of course, we start encountering new other beings, and you can imagine how that goes, right? So we end up experiencing the experiences of pain and suffering and struggle and loss and trauma, and that is how we end up teaching ourselves to split the body and the soul. We like, and this is part of the process. I don't want to make this sound like this is a bad thing, that we fell, that we sinned, and then we were being punished. It's not, none of that. And I actually very deliberately want to stay away from that kind of language of sin and punishment. It's not that. It's simply this was part of the process of creation. This is part of the process of creation. Apparently, it was to get us to where we are now, to get us to where we are today, to get us to this very, very fascinating and unique point of the human experience on Earth. We would not be experiencing this if it were not for this separation of the body and the soul. And it's interesting because now what are we doing right now? Of course, we are learning to meld body and soul back together and to truly get them connected, to truly reconnect them as one being, right? But when we experienced trauma and we started to separate ourselves from our body, we did that as an act of self-preservation because we started to understand how much the body could suffer, right? We were like, wow, this really hurts. This physical body can endure a exquisite amount of suffering, and this really hurts. It's like in the beginning we found the pain. In the beginning, for a long time, we experienced physical pain with complete equanimity. We were just like, wow, that hurts. Isn't that really interesting? Wow, isn't that so interesting? The sensations my body can bring me. and we didn't actually experience suffering. This is that old Buddhist idea that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and that you can actually experience pain, even physical pain, and it doesn't have to cause suffering. It's just a sensation. Why do we think physical pain is bad? That's very interesting, isn't it? In the beginning, as our ancient Lyran selves, we didn't actually think physical pain was bad. That in and of itself, to explore that thought process a little bit further. So a segment, right, not all, but some Lyrans were very interested in the experiences of pain, of physical pain. And they basically, they didn't have any trauma about physical pain. They just thought that was an interesting sensation, one worth exploring further. And so they went off to create experiences where they would explore the depths of physical pain, what they could experience themselves. And of course, if you're experiencing physical pain yourself, you need to create someone to inflict that on you. And you will, of course, also inflict pain on others. And that went on for a while until, of course, now everyone is traumatized, because at some point the physical pain does become so intense that now it becomes suffering. There is like a breaking point here. I have memories of one past life on Earth where I was tortured to death, and the torturing part, I was like holding out in unconditional love. While I was being tortured, I was like, I was so tuned into source consciousness, and the love of source was just like flowing through me. And it was interesting that the torture was actually increasing my ability to channel source energy and to hold unconditional love. And I was this like cauldron of source energy, of love, of light, just boiling away while being tortured. But eventually it went on to the point where I experienced like being broken, right? There was this like breaking point, and I was broken, and then I could no longer withstand the torture, right? And I could no longer channel source energy, and I could no longer hold unconditional love for the person torturing me. And that is when, I was broken and I gave up and I died. And that even though that's an earth experience here, this is the same kind of thing happening, the same kind of theme I'm tuning into here on the galactic level, where the Lyrans, in all of their exploration, in all of their journeying, in all of their exploration into pleasure and joy and ecstasy, right? All of the physical sensations of ecstasy that you can possibly have, they also equally, there's like a divide, right? Some of them went off to go be positive, benevolent, beautiful beings that went off to explore the like spiritual ecstasy grounded through the body, and experiences physical ecstasy. Some of them went off to explore the ecstasy of pain, of physical pain, right? And that eventually caused them to go off and become, what we would call some of the negative beings. Some people call them the fallen beings, the fallen races, but really from the beginning, they were all one collective, and they were actually on the same journey. It's just that some went off to explore pleasure and some went off to explore pain. But in the beginning, it's like there was no difference between pain and pleasure. It was only physical sensation. It was only physical sensation. We did not learn about the difference until we learned about the difference. That somebody is at some point in our collective soul history, we had to learn the difference between physical pain and physical pleasure. But it's interesting because that's somehow right now, as we are blending back together the soul and the body, really getting reconnected to our body, we are having to like overcome and release this fear of physical pain, and the fear of physical suffering. That's because it's pain that keeps us out of our bodies, right? It is pain that keeps us out of our bodies. And it's interesting because being out of our bodies has created very interesting experiences for us, right? That is an experience that we had. Now we know what it is like to be separated from our bodies. And we're finding out right now, what is it like to reconnect with your body and become one with your body? And what can you do, soul and body, now that you are braiding yourselves, stitching yourselves back together, and you become one being? How much more powerful will you be? How many new experiences can you have in the body? How can you create in the physical from the body when you're fully in your body, fully connected with it, knowing that it is not separated from you, and no longer trying to keep your there's this feeling of not wanting to touch the ground, right? Like sitting on a chair, but the floor is really dirty, so like you're like keeping your feet up off the ground, but eventually you can only like sit there with like your feet hunched up off the ground like so long, right? Eventually you're gonna have to put your feet down. It's kind of what we're doing here. We're not going to be able to keep our souls up out of our bodies for forever. Eventually we're going to have to settle back down right fully into the body and allow the feet of our souls to touch the feet of our feet, right? To get fully back in the body, and then allow our feet to touch the ground. Cats know about all of this. Cats hold this wisdom within them. All of the cats are slightly different, right? If you think of all of the different varieties of cats on Earth. And isn't it interesting that there are so many different varieties of cats? I've always wondered about that, because I'm pretty sure there are more varieties of felines than there are of canines. I mean, unless we're counting breeds of dogs, but as long as we include dog as one variety, right? You know, we have snow leopards and lions and tigers and jaguars and leopards and house cats, the ancestors of the house cats, lynx, bobcats, so many more. There's so many more like really unique and niche type of felines besides the obvious. We just don't always see them, right? Most of them are reclusive. We don't always see them. They're so powerful. Third house messages. Sagittarius, I see. Pisces, I believe. This is so much mutable energy. This is really interesting. Because the third house, this is Gemini energy. Gemini and Sagittarius are opposite energies, right? They're an axis. They're a polarity. The third house, or the Gemini over here, being the micro, the details, the mind, communication, the local environment. Sagittarius being temperance and transcendence, higher wisdom, higher learning, higher spirituality, expansion and growth and escape. Pisces, I could even use some of the words. Pisces is another mutable sign, right? You have mutable air, mutable fire, mutable water. Very interesting. Pisces, I could use some of the same words to describe as I described Sagittarius. And that's interesting that comes out in this reading, because I was thinking about this the other day. Sagittarius and Pisces both have this element of transcendence and escape, but they do it differently. But apparently both of those types of escape are coming through here. The Sagittarian escape is kind of escape through travel, physical travel or traveling through the mind, right? Like traveling into a vision that you have, right? Traveling into a vision that you are creating, or a vision that you want to explore, right? Pisces does this escape by I almost want to say the complete transcendence of everything. The complete transcendence of everything. Sagittarius moves away from the micro into the macro, but it is forever connected. It never can entirely escape. It can pull away. It can move to the top. It can expand and pull like a rubber band, but it can never really entirely get away from the micro energy. But Pisces can escape anything, because Pisces includes here ultimate spiritual transcendence of everything, because it kind of does this by the image I'm seeing here is Pisces gathers all of everything, like gathering everything. Imagine if you were to gather all of the water on the earth, all of it up, gather it all up and put it in the palm of your hand, and then turn that into a blinding ball of white light. That's the closest I can come to describing the Pisces transcendence. Taking all of the water and then instantly transforming it through transcendence, turning it into white light. In that way, Pisces is both like the ocean and the light. It is the water, but the water can become the liquid light. That's the best I can do, guys. I really see this here as representing the journey of Lyran consciousness as we were in the beginning, far, far back in our past. We were this, we came into our bodies, we came into our Lyran bodies, we created our Lyran bodies. We were brand new, we were young, we were focused, and we were local, and we wanted to create the micro, right? And we did that to communicate. That's interesting. What did I just say? We did that to communicate. We did that to communicate with each other so that we could really see and experience one another. We created this entire physical experience. To see each other under a microscope. Apparently there's this feeling coming down, the type of body you create for yourself, the type of human experience, or the type of, it doesn't have to be human, but the type of physical experience you create for yourself. When we come down here and we create these physical lives and experiences for ourselves, it is apparently a very good way of communicating, for our higher selves to communicate, because we can kind of see, oh, this is what that is really like, and we can show each other things more clearly and in more detail. It's like the physical experience offers a type of communication that is at once simplified and more detailed. Does that make sense? It's simplified in that we can only share a few things at once. Oh, I understand. Okay, so imagine, some of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about here. You know, when you see things on a higher level, it's always like prismatic, right? It's prismatic because it's everything all at once. there's so many examples. Like, so okay, just to pick one random example, I once had many like golden shining faces come visit me and they had a message for me. The message is not, it was a good message. The message is not important though, just what they look like. All of these shining golden faces, there were, I don't know, maybe 10 of them all at once. But it was not like one specific being with one specific face. It was like a collective of beings, but that was also one being, but was presenting itself to me with like 10 different faces, and the faces kept flickering in and out, right? Just like looking in a prism. And I understood it. It was like, it would have taken that being or that message a large, like a much greater amount of energy to focus itself into one specific face, into one specific being, and there was really no reason to do that. Why would it bother doing that, right? And it was really interesting for me to see all of these different faces all superimposed on each other and flickering in and out of existence. That's what I mean. Everything is prismatic. Everything is prismatic. Everything is prismatic. Everything is happening in multiplicity, right? Everything is happening in multiplicity. But when we come down into the physical experience, we are in one body, presenting one face at a time. Of course, your face, how many different facial expressions can you create with your face? A lot. So it's not that we're limited to being one thing when we're in the physical body, but we are kind of limited to presenting one specific aspect at a time. And apparently our higher selves see this as very useful and very interesting. And it is like to them, it's like entirely novel and unique. How interesting to be one specific thing for one specific moment of time, and to be able to isolate that and then to manifest it and materialize it and present it and communicate it in physical form. How fascinating. How absolutely fascinating. So we really enjoyed that, going, I am here and I am this, and this is what I am right in this exact moment, and we could communicate that to one another. And that was really cool for a long time. But then we kind of got bored. Okay, sorry for the awkward cut. I got a little bit derailed. So returning back to this. So we were exploring our microcosm, right? And eventually we wanted to go beyond that. We wanted to explore. We wanted to escape. We wanted to transcend. So we had this Sagittarius experience. We wanted to go out and see. We wanted to go out and explore. This is when we went to other star systems and became all kinds of different things. And it was all in this quest to know what was beyond and to go beyond, right? To go above and beyond, to go out there, to go explore, to experience, and to see. Even I think this was great for a very long time as well. But even this, there's a sense of eventual fatigue. Eventual fatigue. What do you do when the Sagittarius energy becomes tired? Right? What do you do when the Sagittarius energy itself, when the impetus to explore, when the desire to push the limits, what do you do when that becomes tired? And in comes Pisces. Everything ends up with Pisces, right? Everything goes to Pisces at the end because it is the culmination of all other energies. It's the container, the conclusion point, the beginning and the end of everything. It's where everything ends up naturally, not out of force, but naturally. Pisces is like incapable of forcing anything. So Pisces kind of exists in the place where everything naturally ends up. It is the point where everything naturally concludes. And because of this, Pisces exists like it cannot be created. Pisces energy cannot be created. It cannot be forced. It exists only once everything gets there naturally. Everything has to come home in the end. Everything comes to Pisces in the end, but naturally and by consent and by free will. It is an organic process that can take untold eons of timeless time, right? And that's where this Lyran consciousness kind of is right now. This is within us right now, right? This is within us right now, because our Lyran selves, our Lyran aspects, or, you know, some of you, if you're like me and you resonate really, really strongly with your ancient Lyran past, it can feel like your soul has been going and going and going for so long. It's like you don't even know how to conceptualize continuing because it's just been so long. And you could be aware of some kind of brokenness within you. It can feel like the length of the journey itself and the struggles that you've been through to get here, that it has broken something inside of you. This could be related to your Chiron wound. Maybe not. Maybe for some of you. Maybe not for some of you. That's just one example, one way of looking at it. But there's definitely this feeling of, how do I heal? How do I release? How do I transform? How do I transcend the enormity of my experience, the length of my experience? How do I reconcile the length of this experience? How do I reinvent myself as this ancient soul? How do I continue when I feel like I'm at the end? And this doesn't, for some of you, this could be rather a despairing and desperate kind of feeling if you're in depression or dark night of the soul. But, you know, I'm not feeling it that way at this moment. I can still feel, so, you know, for some of you, this could be just this feeling of fatigue, just this feeling of, I don't know what to continue doing. Almost this feeling of like exhaustion and bafflement at the enormity of like what you are. And really, this is interesting because really what you're doing here is looking at the face of infinity, looking at the face of infinity, looking at the fact of eternity, and then kind of going, what do I even do with this? Because it's like this earth experience, this human experience is a culmination point. It is a beginning and it is a end. It is an end to this journey that you've been on since ancient Lyra, and it is a beginning of something new. So there is this kind of desire to get closure for your like your Lyran aspect, your Lyran self is kind of looking for some kind of closure, looking for some kind of conclusion. And I think it has been seeking and searching for one, and seeking, some of you seeking and searching some kind of solution. But remember, all things arrive when they arrive. And from the place of this Pisces energy, nothing can be forced to arrive sooner than it will. This is a matter of free will and consent. This Pisces, it's kind of like a mother calling home her children, say, come home. I have dinner ready. Gonna make you a cup of hot chocolate and then put you to bed, right? Come home. It's time to come home. But her children, some of them have come home. Some of them are still running around out there. Some of them still have some energy and they still want to play. Some of them have kind of become lost and they apparently can't hear her calling and they can't quite find their way home. But she's calling and she's calling, come home. And all of her children will come home when they decide they're coming home. Because this type of cosmic mother would never go out there and start yelling at her kids, right? She would never go out there and drag them back inside, because the cosmic mother knows that her children are just emanations of herself. They're aspects of herself. They're not something smaller than her. They're not something less than her. They're not something for her to control. She doesn't even understand. She wouldn't even know how to control. Because she is this like embodiment of pure understanding. And when you're in this place of pure understanding, there can be no desire for control, because to control something would be to inhibit the understanding. It's like the control and understanding are completely incompatible. So she is this being of infinite understanding, and so she's just beckoning her children home, and she can't make them come home any faster than they will. Really, it's like you are becoming this type of mother energy, this Pisces energy, this home energy, this kind of source energy. This, you are the place that everything returns to. You were calling home all of your soul fragments, all of your far-flung aspects, all of your various selves, all of your experiences. You were calling it all home. You were calling it all home, and in every moment that passes, you are more complete. More of your parts coming home. More of your parts coming home. This is a magnetic process. You don't need to rush the flow of the particles riding the beam of the magnet. It's like there's this magnetic beam, and everything is coming home. Even the parts that seem stubborn and seem like they don't want to come home. Even the parts that seem lost and seem like maybe they'll never find their way home. No, there is a magnetism here. And there's this magnetic beam, and all of the particles, all of the fractals, all of the pieces of yourself, they are coming home on this beam. So this is, the thing here is that this is divine timing. Like a new experience of divine timing. The most important thing to integrate here is this, it's like integrating infinity and accepting eternity. Integrating infinity and accepting eternity. Eternity cannot be rushed, and why would you? It is eternal. Infinity cannot be controlled, and why would you? It is everything and everywhere all at once. All there is for you to do is to open up and allow your magnetism to radiate out. This is about your magnetism, or about your gravity. Your gravity. There is this feeling here that the more you relax, the more you open up, the more your gravity waves, or more your magnetic beams, the more they can be released. It feels like when you close off, and when you worry, and when you try to control, you actually put walls, almost like you put magnetic shielding, or if there is something that could shield you against gravity, it's almost like you're putting shields around your own gravity. So all there is for you to do is to relax and open up, completely open up, dropping all of those shielding, dropping all of those walls, and that allows your light. But it's not even, so you could think of this as allowing your light to shine, to being a bright light, so that your particles, your fractals can see your light and come home. That is how I would have described this in most other readings, and that is a good way of describing this, but that's not really the feeling here. There's a difference in feeling, right? There's a difference in feeling about being a bright light and shining bright, and being a lighthouse to attract the particles that will come home by following the light. But maybe that's it, right? I feel like really you've already brought home all of your particles, all of your fractals of consciousness. You've already brought home the fractals of consciousness that can see the light, right? You've already been a lighthouse, and your soul fractals have already seen the light and gone, I'm going to go towards the light, and they've already come home. What about all the other fractals that can't see the light? Maybe they're blind. Maybe they literally don't have eyeballs. Or maybe they don't like the light. Maybe they're afraid of the light. How else can you attract them? How else can you call them home? Right? Maybe they're deaf. Maybe they don't have ears. Maybe they're afraid of loud noises. So maybe they can't hear you calling. But what can they feel? They can sense magnetism, and they can sense gravity. This is so interesting. So release so you've already released the shielding that was shielding your light, right? You've already been a lighthouse. Then there's deeper levels of shielding. Drop the shields that are holding back your magnetism. Drop the shields that were holding back your gravity. You already know exactly how to do this because you already did this with your light. Now you're doing it with magnetism and gravity. I'm kind of seeing it in that order. Like light and sound up on the higher level, and then lower down you have magnetism and gravity. So now we're operating through magnetism and gravity. It's not about light and sound anymore. It's about, well, it is still, and it is always about light and sound, but that's not what we're emphasizing, and that's not what we're exploring right now so much, right? That is still there, it is still with us, but now we're exploring magnetism and gravity. Let your magnetism out. Let it flow out. There's nothing, all you need to do is allow it. Same thing with your gravity. Just letting your gravity be, right? You can't control your gravity. You don't need to. It's just allowing it to flow outwards. And your your little soul, not that they're little, but I mean some of them might be. Your soul fragments, your soul particles, your soul fractals is the word I like. Soul fractals that are out there. Some of them will be caught up in the magnetism, and that will help them come back to you. Some of them will be caught up in the gravity, and they will fall back to you, just like something falling out of the sky. And all you need to do is be there to catch yourself. All you need to do is be there to catch the particles falling back to you. All you need to do is be open and be available and be ready and be receptive. And you don't need to worry about missing them, right? Does the earth worry about you flying off into the void? No, the earth has gravity, and you walk on the earth because of gravity. The earth does not worry about missing something, right? If you were out in space and you were flung towards the earth, she wouldn't have to worry about missing you because you would be sucked into her gravity well. And if your trajectory was somehow so off that you were flying past the earth and you missed her gravity well and you didn't get sucked into the earth, well, there's nothing she can do about that, literally. And that would just mean that you would go off and fly around and then fly through the cosmos, and eventually you would loop back, right? Everything comes back. Everything is eventually recaptured by gravity in the end, right? Out in space. Everything is captured by something's kind of gravity eventually. So you don't have to worry about that. Just allow your magnetism and allow your gravity to flow out. And then all of your parts, all of your pieces, all of your aspects will naturally fall back to you, will come home. And then you will be home. I am home, right? That's the feeling. That's the feeling. I am home. I am whole, and I am home.